This is King World News. I'm Eric King, and you're about to hear our exclusive weekly gold brief with GATA, this time with Chris Powell. Remember to go to our homepage at www.kingworldnews.com for more interviews, where this week we also have Rob Arnott from Research Affiliates, who manages $40 billion, legendary technical analyst Ralph Acampora, Rick Rule from Global Resource Investments, Kevin Kerr of Kerr Trading International, and be sure to tune in next week where we will have James Dines, David Tice, Tom Dorsey, as well as Bill Lagner. Joining us now is Chris Powell of GATA. Chris, obviously gold is big news this week as it closed very near $1,000. What are your thoughts on the action in gold?
Well, you really hope that this will be the long-awaited commercial signal failure. The bullion banks have been selling enormously into the rally, and they are usually backed up by the U.S. government and the Bank of England and other central banks. You just don't know how much metal the central banks are willing to flush down the toilet here in order to control the price. At some point, they're going to run out. At some point, they're going to retreat to a higher gold price. Perhaps this will be the time. Certainly, the gold chart is immensely favorable to a breakout now, but technical analysis in a manipulated market is not terribly valuable.
What about the action in silver this week? That was constructive as well, was it not?
Oh, silver is incredibly volatile. Some people think that the short position in silver is even more tenuous than the short position in gold, more concentrated. Some people argue that there's less silver in the world than gold, but we've been awaiting bigger fireworks than this in silver for a long time.
Very quickly, what about the news that China is basically defaulting on some losing derivatives contracts? What is your take on the significance of that?
Well, again, it's kind of a clouded story. We don't know exactly how far China is taking it, but simply that it has become an issue is very encouraging. I think it's an indication that China has realized that the New York investment houses are basically organized crime syndicates selling paper instruments of no value that really enrich only the New York investment houses themselves. So if anybody ripped them off, we would not be too unhappy about it.
What about the speech? I know this is a favorite of yours from William Jennings Bryan, his Cross of Gold speech from 1896. Do you mind talking about that since it's a favorite speech of yours?
Yeah, Bryan was representing the farmers and the miners, the commodity producers back in the 1896 presidential campaign. He was arguing for the remonetization of silver in the United States. The producing interests wanted a greater money supply because we were in a period of deflation in the United States, as we often went into, I think, every 10 years or so. He was arguing for bimetallic monetary system to put silver into the money supply to make things easier on debtors and diminish the advantage that creditors had at that time, but then very similar to what we have today. He was basically trying to represent the producing interests against the banking interests. And I think it's the same issue that we've got today. I find his speech, the famous Cross of Gold speech that he gave at the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1896, which ended up getting him the presidential nomination, really the most stirring speech I know of in American politics. And I just think it resonates so much with the issues today. I love quoting from it. He says, "Those who are opposed to this proposition, which really is bimetallism, tell us that the issue of paper money is a function of the bank, and the government ought to go out of the banking business. I stand with Jefferson rather than with them and tell them, as he did, that the issue of money is a function of government, and the banks should go out of the governing business." Well, you've heard many people complain for a long time that the banks run the Treasury Department of the Federal Reserve, and I think that's established fact. Well, 120 years ago, this was pretty much the same issue, the issue of the banking interests in the government that we have today, even though we did not yet have the Federal Reserve then. He says, "When you come before us and tell us that we shall disturb your business interests, we reply that you have disturbed our business interests by your action. We say to you that you have made too limited in its application the definition of a businessman. The man who is employed for wages is as much a businessman as his employer. The attorney in a country town is as much a businessman as the corporation counsel in a great metropolis. The merchant at the crossroads store is as much a businessman as the merchant of New York. The farmer who goes forth in the morning and toils all day, begins in the spring and toils all summer, and by the application of brain and muscle to the natural resources of this country creates wealth, is as much a businessman as the man who goes upon the Board of Trade and bets upon the price of grain. The miners go 1,000 feet into the earth or climb 2,000 feet upon the cliffs and bring forth from their hiding places the precious metals to be poured into the channels of trade, are as much businessmen as the few financial magnates who, in a back room, corner the money of the world. We come to speak for this broader class of businessmen. Well, that's what it is today. The few financial magnates who, in a back room, corner the money of the world. That's what we have, going on today. Nothing has changed in 120 years.
William Jennings Bryan also said, and I don't know if it was during that speech, but we believe it is part of sovereignty and can no more with safety be delegated to private individuals than can the power to make penal statutes or levy laws for taxation. And he was talking about this issue of coining money and issuing money and the fact that it's a function of government. So